Welcome to another Ladies Fridays on BFA. Hello.
What's up, Nat? How are you?
I am well. It's Friday, girl. Let's get into it because it's a busy Friday. The news cycle.
It is.
It's been cycling. But, we're going to start off on a more serious note than we normally do because some news came down in the WNBA that was a little concerning and a lot concerning, actually.
Right.
And so Las Vegas Aces guard Riquna Williams has been suspended right now from team activities and was charged with some domestic violence allegations. The Las Vegas Aces put out a statement. They said they were made aware of domestic violence charges against a member of our team, Riquna Williams. As an organization, we condemn domestic violence of any kind. At this time, Riquna Williams will be precluded from participating in team activities. Our thoughts are with the parties involved in this situation. We are currently gathering more information, and as such, we will not have further comments at this time. So that statement was issued on Wednesday, and lots of discussion started to happen. And to help us with this topic and what's going on and what the conversation is Subria Whitaker, founder of Grow the Game. Subria, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for talking about this as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we have to talk about this. And, Subria is so knowledgeable about everything, guys, when it comes to the W. So we, of course, want to talk about all the amazing things that are happening in the league, but we do have to address this. So, let's get into it. So Riquna Williams report came out. She was arrested and charged. 9 charges around domestic violence. And for me, it was like a shock. I'm still new to covering this league, but it was more of a shock, not because it was domestic violence charge, sadly, but it was a shock to me because of the nature of some of the allegations. And then also, she did have a past domestic violence situation where she was suspended for 7 games by the league. And so now this is her second occurrence right now, the charges. It's a second allegation. So Subria, can you help us break this down, in terms of, I saw the reaction around the league. I saw players tweeting. I saw WNBA Twitter tweeting about this, but I'm going to just ask you directly. One of the things when it comes to domestic violence between same-sex couples, I know there was an issue before in the past where Brittany Griner was accused of something. And I've heard from people, they were like, well, we viewed that as 2 women fighting each other. This doesn't feel the same, but can you talk to us about the dynamics at play here?
Yeah. And I agree with them, honestly, just from the Brittany Griner situation before that also involved another WNBA player. So that changes things. And like you said, as someone that's in that community, as well as someone that is a victim of domestic violence, I definitely view them differently. And especially, like you said before, this is the second incident where, this player has been accused of these things. And before it was very similar, right? Arrest on felony charges after a violent incident involving a firearm. So I think this situation definitely needs to be handled differently. And from what I saw on WNBA Twitter, there is a call for something to happen. But just like with anything else, the court of public opinion and the court of law are 2 different courts. And the collective bargaining agreement that the WNBA has is what is going to be considered the governing document on how the team, as well as Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, will respond to these allegations.
What I found so interesting, and I'm happy you brought up the CBA, especially in addressing this, what I found interesting in reading into this was that previously when Riquna Williams had her incident when she was with the Los Angeles Sparks, the WNBA and the WNBPA, the Players Association, did not have a joint agreement or a joint policy within the CBA. This was in 2019. And it actually prohibited the WNBA from doing anything, essentially, and making decisions, right? So it was the Los Angeles Sparks that had to sit her out, and versus the the WNBA making her sit out. So now, as a result of that, and I don't know how many people know this, but the WNBA and this new CBA started to match what the NBA had did. So the NBA came together with the Players Association and created a domestic violence policy that they came together on. And essentially the turnout of that was it allowed the NBA to provide administrative leave and separate a player from their team. Whereas before, when this happened with Riquna Williams, she was not separated from her team from the WNBA. It was the team itself that had to make this decision. And so it is interesting to see now the WNBA having more power as a result of the CBA to do something. And I know that that's probably what WNBA Twitter and what you're talking about, Subria, is like as far as like being able to do something and making a stand on this. But you're right. Riquna Williams is innocent until proven guilty. And so court of law and court of public opinion are two different things.
Yeah, one of the things that I thought, that was different also with this case versus the Brittany Griner and Glory Johnson case, when it happened, was that in that situation, at least the police indicated that they couldn't actually identify that someone was an actual abuser in the situation. And so if they can't say, and it looks like both parties are involved, they charge both parties. Based on the reports right now, it seems clear cut that Riquna was the abuser, at least that's how she's being charged. So is that the only thing that makes it different in terms of like this domestic violence case, or are there any other differences like that we should be aware of that others may not? Subria?
Well, I mean, like you said, the reports that I read and the articles that I read, it said that the Justice of Peace, Rebecca Sachs, noted that the charges here, in this case, stem from acts that police said occurred over an extended period of time. So I think that alone, in combination with the fact that this is, Williams' second offense with similar circumstances involving an incident with their partner, definitely changes things, as well as, the charges themselves, right? Like 9 counts, 5 of which are felony charges. And strangulation is a very serious act. Like 3 counts of domestic battery by strangulation speaks to, and Natalie, I know you know just with your legal background as well, like that speaks to intent very differently than maybe some other, I guess, acts that may, occur in a domestic, situation like this. So I think the strangulation adds another level, and just the charges, felony charges, multiple counts stemming from 2 to 15 years, depending on the count, plus 4 misdemeanor charges. This is very serious. And it's not the WNBA's first serious incident like this, but like you all have been saying, the fact that they have teamed up to create something in the CBA where it's a joint policy on domestic and intimate partner violence, which is even separate from the section on player arrests, I think is going to set a precedent, for this league and hopefully other leagues to follow.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it feels very violent, these charges. And I want to just make clear the reason I keep referring back to Brittany Griner, because that's not the only incident. There have been other incidences, as you pointed out, is I saw people tweeting and sort of coming like, oh, you guys want to give Brittany Griner a pass for what happened in the past with her. But they're very different situations. And that's why it's important to understand the facts and circumstances and how they differ. So I that's why I'm harping on it. And I just want to make sure that I'm reflecting that correctly, Subria.
And also, this incident, allegedly, according to reports, lasted about an hour.
Right.
And that is important as well.
Right. I want to, Nat, to go back to your point just now, that's a really great point. We talked also about like Shamik Holdsclaw and Jennifer Lacey, also 2 WNBA players, but at the time Holdsclaw was retired, so there wasn't an impact on her playing career, in the way that played out. And I think that's what's interesting or going to be very unique about this situation with Williams, is seeing the impact. Subria, I want to ask you about, again, impact on the aces. I feel, and Nat feels this way too, as you can see from, the way that we're looking at this, the Aces are a walking juxtaposition, as Nat put here. They have had a perfect season almost on the court. They're having a historic run in their ability to win, play together, and just play really great basketball, on top of having one of the most visible faces of the league. You would imagine that this is a perfect storm for them to be the poster child of the WNBA, yet they started their season with controversy, and they continue now with this situation. How does this a situation like this impact, you think, the brand of the Aces, but also the team, the players, and them kind of reconciling with what their teammate has been charged with?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of layers to that as well. So she was already out, I want to say, with a back injury. So
that's right.
It's not going to, in my opinion, affect the court play so much as to say, but like you said, they are coming off of a championship season and are trying to go back to back. And everyone talks about how hard it is to go back to back. They've been number one at the standings, but also, like you said, they started the season with controversy. And there were some tweets that, like they have been trying to do with the Brittany Griner situation, have been conflating it with, comments aimed at Coach Becky Hammon for that other incident involving, former player, now LA Sparks player De'Arica Hamby. And I think the brand is under a microscope. The way that they handle it, from players to front offices to the social media accounts, people are looking at it. And because they've been on top for the second season in a row, and they are the defending champions, they're already essentially looked at as the villain, right? Like, people are going to root for the underdog essentially anyway. So people are looking for any reason to, trash or put any negativity towards this team. So I think that they have to be really, really careful about the way they handle this, which in my opinion should be very different than the way they handled press related to the De'Arica Hamby and Coach Becky Hammon suspension, because that was not talked about enough, in my opinion. So I'm also looking at how national media is going to handle this when we talk about, the halftime shows and WNBA countdown and things like that, of how they're going to handle that. I think that's also very important, because it's a Las Vegas Aces issue when it comes to the brand, as well as the WNBA.
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing people call into question their culture. So I think, like you said, their response is going to be really important. And that would, it's not totally them, right? Because the league is going to weigh in on this. But one, what kind of punishment do you anticipate coming? That's first. And then second, do you think we will see Riquna Williams play again in the WNBA?
That is such a complicated question, because, again, going back to the CBA, it outlines what is to be taken into consideration, and the factors and who the decision maker is. And so, because of the severity of the situation, what we talked about with the strangulation, the fact that it's a second offense and felony charges, like all of those things, and really that only matters if Riquna isn't convicted essentially pretty swiftly, and then that is no longer a question. They're just going to have to serve the sentence. But I do think that it has to be way more than the 10-game suspension from the previous offense. I think it should be about getting help, and not just for her, but everyone in the league, because you never know what all the players are going through on either end of a situation like this. So I'm hoping that it is one that makes sense. It's one that sets a precedent moving forward. But in my opinion, no, I don't think that we may see her again, just because of the other incidents and how a lot of people felt like it's been swept under the rug and everyone's looking at us, and we've set the standard for so many things. I think that is going to be taken into consideration as well.
I think it's worth saying, and making sure that we call out, that the charges that Riquna Williams had in 2019 were dropped in 2020, and that the WNBA cannot impose any sort of punishment for things once they've not been found convicted or the charges were dropped. So that is why that ultimately ended up playing out that way. But you're right. Depending on how this plays out in court, that will ultimately tell us, the answer there. This is a very complicated thing. And just like you said, the WNBA, fairly or unfairly, being put under microscope for doing the right thing in these cases is interesting. And the last thing I'll say too, the NBA's domestic violence policy does include educational and career, like counseling courses as a part of their policy. And the WNBA took that into consideration as well for their new CBA. So that should be hopefully something that's offered to Riquna Williams and others that experience this again.
Subria, thank you for joining us, for your honesty, for your vulnerability. This one's a hard one to discuss. We appreciate you. Hopefully the next conversation is one that's a different tone. Thank you for joining me again today.
Well, I mean, in every statistic, they outperformed the Netherlands. But the problem is we like to see our women's team dominate.
Yes.
And we don't feel comfortable unless we are up by 2 or 3 goals. And that's just not going to be the way of the future, because other teams are getting better. The other federations are putting so much more money in their programs. And credit to Netherlands, they played an amazing first half. And every single team has to figure out how to define themselves in every World Championship.
Well, spoken like the pro she is, but I really appreciated this from Abby because, look, we're going to talk about the U.S. women's team because they're incredible. But I love what she said and pointing out the fact that, because I saw a lot of like worriness and nerves. This was the first time I want to say it's been in 14 years that the U.S. has even been down and had to come back.
Since 2011. That's right.
Yes.
Since Brazil, 2011.
Right. So that was like new territory for them. And to me, I think we should be applauding them for their resolve and resilience and coming back, because they know the expectations on this team. But instead, I felt the discourse afterwards was a lot of, they're in trouble. They should have been up by more goals. Like people just want the U.S. to dominate. And some of that is that American exceptionalism. And we understand what this team has done in the past before. We get it. But in this situation, like, I also think we have to start giving credit to other teams. They're good. They're better, like Abby said. And so I was so happy that she pointed that out. Now, look, let me tell you something, Lindsey. Woo! I loved it. I loved it all. I loved everything. I loved everything that happened in that game. Like her passion came out, she was shoving, she got heated, and then she had a header. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how you respond. I loved it. I loved it. I loved that passion, Zena.
I agree with you all the way through. And I think it's also notable to say, Lindsey Horan is the only one on that team that played in Europe. And there is something to be said about European football in comparison to American football. It's more physical. It is more aggressive. And you could see that in the way that she went up against the underdog. Like she was not with her teammate. Her teammate. Exactly. She was not with the insert expletive. She was not with it. But of course they made up at the end, and we could talk about what that looked like. But even before that, this whole game was reflective of what you're talking about. These teams are getting better. And it's not just what Abby was talking about in terms of investment into the clubs, which is huge, right? You're getting smarter minds in there, you're getting better coaches in there, you're getting more resources. But people are watching their film. And it was so evident that Netherlands watched their film. They knew Sophia Smith, who already had 2 goals against Vietnam. They knew Trinity Rodman, who is an offensive threat, period, and Alex Morgan were going to be critical to be able to advance the ball and also to score. And they shut them down in the first half. The U.S. looked discombobulated. They looked like they didn't know what they were doing. And that was what was so interesting about why, Coach Vlatko and Danovsky was saying, I started the team, the same 11 from the Vietnam team because they were in good rhythm. It's like, they didn't look like they were in good rhythm. And the Netherlands completely disrupted that.
Well, look, he only had like one substitution for the game, which ended up being a key.
And that was a whole nother thing.
But so that was a big conversation around it. And look, there is merit to saying that the U.S. team has to play better because there were a number of goals that they just didn't complete. You brought up Rodman. She had one that and so there were so many of them, right? But I also think there's what's also just sort of being overlooked is a lot of these players are new to playing with each other on this stage. And there's a chemistry that has to develop. And that was also something that Abby pointed out later in that, that interview. We didn't have the full thing, but she's like, the chemistry grows. You need 6, 7 games. It's a number of games. And you kind of build as you progress. This is still the early stages. So, and Netherlands are a worthy opponent. We knew that coming into this game. So there are some who say, well, look, he didn't want to do a lot of substitutions because he wanted to go with the players he knew he could trust, and that's why he even got certain players out early in the last game. They were up, because, like an Alex Morgan, who's a little older, not as young, he left Sophia in, but you want to get them out so you can play Alex Morgan, that whole match. So look, can you always play better? Can you always do better? Of course, right? But I think I just think they showed tremendous resolve, and I was all about Lindsey and the back and forth. And I just, afterwards there were a lot of tweets and pictures showing that they had made up and everything felt good.
Right.
That's great. Okay. I don't care though. I mean, yeah, it's fine. They're all good. I don't want to say that I don't care, but it's just I felt I saw more of these pictures before I could even find anything with the shoving and the pushing and the arguing with the refs.
They want to make it seem so nice. Girl, right, exactly. I love the passion. I love the fight. I love the aggression that women are able to demonstrate. This is exactly what we were talking about the last time we were on. It's not a tea party in these games. This is World Cup. This is representing your country. This is blood, sweat, and tears coming out to fruition on the field. And you only get this every 4 years. We don't need hugs. We don't need that. We want the passion that you're talking about.
It's okay.
Yes, exactly. Nobody's going to get mad at that. We love it in the men's side, the men's arena. We can love it here too. And so, yeah, I'm with you on that. We didn't need all that hugging. Lindsey, Horan, you keep going, girl. You keep going with that energy because we're behind you. We're supporting you. We love it.
In fact, I don't even want to see the friendly stuff. Until this is over, we ain't buddies.
Right. I respect that. That's how it's supposed to be. Yes, that's how it's supposed to be. That's competition. That is what it is. And you think about the number one competitor, period, right? Everyone says Kobe or Jordan, right? Between those two in terms of basketball, we love talking basketball. They weren't friends with you, right? Exactly. They were in your face you ain't nothing until after the game. Then they might, talk to you, give you some pointers, tap you on the butt, whatever it is. But they were not cool with you on the court. And that's just what it was. So I'm with it. I love it. And I hope we keep seeing it. I think it is early stages, just like you said. And I think that's why everyone's so worked up about it. But just the point you're making about the resolve and the resilience, it is also still early stages, and they were able to come back at a time where it looked like they might get their first defeat in the first early rounds. So I am also proud of them, and I'm gonna just go ahead and say I'm proud of the Netherlands, and I'm proud for every team that has been killing it, including a team that you have a connection to.
Well, yeah, but before we get to my homeland, because I want to talk, I want to talk about Nigeria first, because they did.
Oh, okay.
Some really, they pulled off what people are calling an upset, big upset, and that was tremendous for the one of the co-hosts, Australia.
Right.
So I mean, it was a big deal. To
add some context to that too, this Group B was considered the group of death. And for those of you that aren't watching the World Cup over and over again, these group stages is basically you're just trying to get out of the group, top 2 advances out of the first round. So group of death is basically a group where anyone can come out. Anyone. And that's what Group B is about. And you're looking across the co-host of Australia And also they've got some really talented players on their roster that are world renowned, not just good for the World Cup, but like across all the leagues. And so for Nigeria to come out with the energy that they came out, and they've been coming with the energy, their crowd has too, but they really took advantage of Australia making mistakes and mixing things up. Their star players weren't looking like stars, and Nigeria ultimately looked like monsters against them, scoring 2 goals in 8 minutes. I mean, that was insane. So
right.
I, again, give props to Nigeria, another team ranked 40th, right, coming into this. This is not a top team, but they were top caliber. They were possibly, capable of coming out of this group. And now they're in the top 2 and looking like they can make it to the round of 16.
And beat a team ranked in the top 10. I mean, it's tremendous.
Right.
While also making some history. Oshoala, her goal that eventually sealed it for the team. First African to score 3 goals in the World Cup, like in separate, matches. So
and Women's World Cup,
This here. I mean, they're Women's World Cup, yes, 40th here. Their ranking, like you noted, and Australia's 10th. Mm-hmm. And they, that's tremendous. One of the things I loved was when she scored that goal, the celebration. I love in general how the team celebrated, but I loved her celebration. She took off her shirt. Now, okay, she's still wearing a sports bra.
Becky Ham style.
Yeah. Okay, she's wearing a sports bra. Women work out sometimes in sports bra. Like she wasn't, she's wearing something underneath that you could just go out in most places and see. Well, apparently her father didn't like it. She put that on her Instagram post, like her father didn't like it. But there are others commenting on it. I saw men, and look, some of this is cultural, some of it's cultural, but in general, what I loved about it is that she posted a picture with her shirt still off saying, my dad definitely isn't happy. This is unapologetic. This is defiant because her father wasn't happy about it. And then she still went and she posted the picture. I mean, look at that. I mean, she's so badass. I love it.
Yes.
This team is swaggy to me. They do. They just have a confidence about them. Like after when they're in the locker room and they're dancing, and it's like, I love it because it also just represents like our culture. And when I say our culture, I'm saying Black culture. That's with all, that's
across
a part
the
of
diaspora.
Right. Across the diaspora.
Exactly.
And it's like, that's whether you're Jamaican, Nigerian, Black American, like you always see us, we're dancing, we celebrate stuff.
Always.
And I love to see that joy from them. And there's a confidence, like I said, they're unapologetic and like just the way they move on the court, the tweets they post, they're not apologizing for being here. They're like, we belong here. And I love that.
Right. And this is why we saw even in the Men's World Cup when Morocco was climbing through the ranks as the Cinderella team. Anytime you do see a team coming out of the African continent, there is a joy around it because that program probably didn't get the same resources or probably had a bit of a harder time getting to that position or whatever it may be. And Nigeria women's team is not exceptional or accepted to that rule. They have had their struggles and their challenges. And so the fact that they're always finding joy and being able to celebrate the good things that they've been able to do, even that first game against Canada, it was a scoreless game. They tied against Canada, or they drew against Canada. But that, if you would see the way that they celebrated that, they screamed for joy around that. And anybody else would have been like, okay, well, you didn't score, but you got a point, which is great, which is huge. And they celebrated with such just joy, just pure joy. And I think that is what you want to remember when you're looking at these world competitions, whether it's the Olympics, whether it's the World Cup, whether it's these big tennis tournaments. Like you appreciate people recognizing the work that they've done to get to where they are and just relishing in that. And I think that's what I love most about these teams from African continents with Black teams or Black members. They relish the game and the experience so much, and it's fun. It's fun to watch.
Well, yeah, you brought up a team that I love that is dear to my heart. Y'all know I'm not shy about my Jamaican culture, but Jamaica, the Reggae Girlz.
Yeah,
right?
I love that name. Love that name. Not happy about what they did.
I know you're not. I know you're not, because they earned a historic draw against your team, France. And here to help us talk about that and some other stuff, we have Callie Lawson-Freeman. Welcome to the show, Sports. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, of course. I mean, listen, you writing stories about my homeland? Yeah. Jamaica, I gotta have you on. No, that's not the only reason, but this was incredible, and you wrote about it. So can you talk a little bit about why this was so significant for Jamaica?
Yeah, I mean, I think you both spoke to this already. The thing that's so beautiful about the World Cup or the Olympics or any of these major events is that they represent something so much larger. You know, Jamaica came in ranked number 43rd in the world. And in 2008, they didn't even have a team due to lack of funding. And you see the meaning of that when they're on the pitch before the match starts against France and their national anthem is playing, and you can see the emotion on their faces. You feel that meaning. And I think sports in general always kind of represent cultural and societal realities, but on the world stage, it just feels so much more profound. And so I think after that match, people probably weren't expecting, Jamaica to defend as well as they did. And then Haiti went and put up a really, 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 really good game against England. People weren't expecting them. I mean, they lost that game, but it was so much more competitive than people thought it would be. So after both of those matches, you saw all these headlines about the gap closing, between these more marginalized teams and the teams that we're so used to see, we're so used to seeing be competitive. And so while I think that sentiment is so important to acknowledge that the gap is closing, I also think it's important to acknowledge that these advancements don't just come by happenstance. These are very intentional, hard fought efforts that are being made. Like you look at Cedella Marley, she raised $300,000 for this team when she heard about them. And 2014, I think, is when she even learned that Jamaica had a team. So she did that because of her love of soccer instilled in her by her father. And even now, the team is still fighting. They just penned an open letter to the Jamaican Football Federation about, funds not being dispersed as agreed. They keep on fighting. And so that's what I really admire. I loved writing about it because I think that type of fight, it moves you, when it comes to these types of stakes.
Yeah,
Callie,
they said,
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying, they said they were keeping their focus despite all these other interruptions that keep coming up. And that is another remarkable part of their story, the fundraising and crowdfunding that they did to get here. I just want to remind people that of all of the countries, Jamaica is the smallest population of them, with only 3 million people, so that they are here on this stage and got their first point, even if they didn't score a goal, and holding France, a top team. Can we get those standings again? Holding France, I know this is so painful for Zena to hear, to a draw. It's just remarkable, and I'm so proud. I'm so proud of the Reggae Girlz. I'm sorry, Zena, I did interrupt you before.
No, it's okay. I love what you're talking about, Callie, in terms of that fight and being able to fight. I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. I know it's something that I didn't realize. Having been born in France, and yes, Allez les Bleus, I'm always cheering on for them. They are one of those teams in the world that do have a federation, that are treated like athletes. And don't get me wrong, the U.S. women's national team still had to fight for their equality in comparison to the men's national team, but they still have a player federation. That is not a given across the world. Not every single country has a government entity that recognizes their status as players and then thus provides them resources in accordance with that. And I think that was a new thing for me to learn through the Jamaican team and seeing this World Cup come together, was how many teams were fighting just to be recognized by their governments to get support. And I don't want to discount the name you mentioned that raised that $304,000. That's Bob Marley's daughter. That's not just some random Marley. That's Bob Marley's daughter coming to use her celebrity, but also just her power and her influence and her status to help them come together. When do you think this is going to change, that countries are finally going to support these women's teams specifically and give them the credit they deserve?
I mean, that's something that even Sadella spoke about. I read an interview that she did with CNN saying that even now that, they made their World Cup debut in 2019 and, like I said, fought to get there, they still struggled to get sponsors. And people were telling them, like, you don't make money. You're just women. Like, you're not the men's team. Why would we invest money into you guys? Like, she said that herself. And so I think that it's going to continue to be an uphill battle. And I hate that, but I think that's just the reality that we face right now. And it's unfortunate. And you see it even with Jamaica's next opponent, Panama. It's the same thing. This is their World Cup debut. And it's going to be a similar battle for them.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that Jamaica can win that without Bunny Shaw. It's a huge loss for them that she won't be in this next match. But listen, they're still in good spirits despite all of the challenges that keep arising for them. And look, like I also want to just shout out the Philippines because there's just so many historic teams, or I should say teams making history, and we can't spend time talking about each one of them enough. But look at the elation, the joy after scoring the first ever goal for your country. Incredible. And also ratings are up. Are up. And ticket sales are up. Right. So go ahead. Dina, no, this is all you. I know you love the ratings and tickets.
I think to me, it's money, right? It's just exactly what Callie was talking about is if you can't get sponsors behind it, if you can't get money behind it, how is the game going to grow? It needs investment. And the fact that Wednesday's contest we'll go back to the women's national team against the Netherlands, that was the #1 women's national team game watched ever of the U.S. team. This was the game that Fox Sports put on. They said that they put a group stage match record for the most watched women's World Cup game, period, in the group stage matches. They also said 1.165 million viewers on Telemundo and 6 million. Over 6 million on Fox Sports. This is crazy. This is what we saw during the NCAA women's tournament. This is now what we're seeing here. This is what we're seeing in the WNBA. All of these things are domino effects for more sponsors, more support. Exactly what Callie's mentioning as what it's going to take to get these teams the support that they deserve. And they just hit the 1.5 million tickets sold in Australia. There is a whole thing around the fact that Australia and Netherlands are host countries, and Australia is selling significantly more tickets than that. New Zealand, not Netherlands, New Zealand. But 1.5 million tickets is amazing.
Incredible.
And it surpasses what they've done before. So it's great.
And we're going to celebrate it. We're going to celebrate that. Like we said, viewership is up, ticket sales are up, and we're going to celebrate that because give it the proper marketing, put them on TV, give it the attention and promotion, and we see what the results are, right? Like, stop telling us that women's sports are inferior. They're not. We just have to invest in them. But while I want to keep talking about the women all day, because I'm a little biased, and I want to keep talking about real football, we should maybe talk about American football, because there was some news also in the NFL. So no, I'm playing around, guys. We love all sports on this show. So big day in the NFL yesterday. It was like a big day because it's like, oh my gosh, injuries and all this stuff. And then it was like some drama. We'll get to all that. So Callie, it must have been a busy day for you. I'm sure you were busy writing, but I think the news of the day yesterday was the injuries. And it was Joe Burrow and Jalen Ramsey. But let's start with Joe Burrow because he went down. It was an injury that occurred, and it wasn't a calf injury. We now know that it's a calf strain, but at the time when it happened, you just saw a video of him on the field, and then he just started limping, went over, hopping on one leg, and he goes down, right? And so this is the thing I hate the most about Twitter, the Twitter doctors. Everyone's initially reacting, oh, it looks so bad, it's so severe, just all, can we just wait? Right. And find out what is going to happen? And so thankfully it did come out. It seems like a major crisis was averted in terms of what the nature of the injury is. There he is being carted off. So, we wish Joe Burrow well, but I know this is not the best thing for him, right? In terms of not being able to finish out camp. This has been a thing that he's been concerned with in the past before, right, Callie?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just after day one of training camp, he was talking about just how focused he was on this time because last offseason he had appendicitis. He had to get surgery to have that removed, and that took a chunk of his time away from the field. And then you even look to his introduction to the league, that 2020 offseason, there were no preseason games because of COVID. So some of this is has nothing to do with anything that's in his control, but it's just been his experience in the league so far that his off seasons don't tend to go uninterrupted. And some people might be like, okay, well, he's not missing regular season time, it doesn't matter. But I think it does. That time is crucial to kind of building connections and just growing together as a team. And so he keeps getting incomplete versions of that. Obviously, he's a top quarterback. It's not hindering him in any way. He's on his way to probably a crazy deal coming up soon. And this injury will not set him back in terms of that. But I do hate this for him in terms of just the way his off seasons keep getting interrupted. And I also think that, like you mentioned with the Twitter reaction, we kind of lost a little bit of the messaging. So I think it's we saw him on the field go down and people immediately just assumed that the injury was going to be really severe. Then it comes out that it's a calf strain and people are like, oh, that's nothing. He's fine. And it's not nothing. A calf strain could still be something really not good. I mean, you look back, I hate to kind of go between sports, but if you look at Kevin Durant with the Warriors, for example, he strained his calf in the 2019
you were going to go
playoffs.
there. I knew it.
I had to. Came back, tore his Achilles. And he missed 9 games, I think it was. So it's not nothing. It's a little bit concerning. Obviously, he'll be fine. And I'm not concerned about that. He's a tough player. And so I don't think we should chalk it up to whatever. But I do think, it's something.
Well, look, we know they're going to be careful with him. He's their biggest asset, their most important asset. So we know they're going to be careful with bringing him back, but I do expect for us to see him back. And Jalen Ramsey also experienced an injury. That one a little bit more serious, meniscus. And he's having surgery today. I don't even know if it's completed. I haven't seen if there's been any more updates, but can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, right before I logged on, I saw the update, which is that he won't be back until December. And so that is about, I think, what he expected when he tweeted after the injury was kind of diagnosed and we were clear that it was a meniscus. He was like, that postseason push is going to be different. And it's really, or that end of season push, he said. And it is going to have to be different because the Dolphins traded for him and that was something that he wanted specifically. This was supposed to be kind of his not prove it year because he's arguably the best CB that we have in the league. I think a lot of people would make that argument, but last season was tough, for the Rams. And so I think this was his time to show I'm not washed, I still got it, and I'm going to be a difference maker on this Dolphins defense. And so for him to be hindered from that, it's so unfortunate. And I think, honestly, I don't know exactly. I think the Dolphins do have options to turn to, though. They have Keon Crossan, they have Cam Smith, but I don't know how much of a splash they'll make compared to what Ramsey was going to be able to offer this season. So it's disappointing.
And what's so tough is that it felt like the Miami Dolphins were just turning a corner, right? Especially after last season. And everyone knows, except, what was going on with Tua Tagovailoa, but there was progress being made under their new leadership. And this was, they got the pieces together in the offseason. There was a lot of excitement around that. So it does feel like a little bit of a gut punch to that uphill climb that they're making, but wishing him a speedy recovery and obviously coming back when he's ready.
For sure. Definitely. Now, before we let you go, Callie, there was a bunch of drama yesterday. And to me, it was just self-created drama for no reason, because Sean Payton just woke up and he chose violence. I don't know. He wants all the smoke and I don't understand why. I don't understand. but he spoke. He did an interview, and everyone was a target. You know, Hackett, last year's Broncos coach, the Jets. Everybody was a target. Everybody was a target here, and I don't understand why this man woke up and chose violence. Callie, can you shed any more light on this?
You know, I thought the same thing. When I read that interview, I was like, wait a second, did this man know he was on the record? And what caused this? You know, why is he coming this hard? But then I stopped and I just remembered how terrible the Broncos actually were last season. It was bad. 4-11 record, Russell Wilson's worst career season. Fans will remember a lot of those embarrassing moments. You had fans, like Broncos fans in the stadium, helping the players on the field by counting down the play clock so that they could avoid delay of game penalties. Like, there were so many issues on a coaching front. But like Sean Payton said, it's not just, you know, a coaching issue. Nathaniel Hackett has moved on from the Broncos. He's joined the Jets. And so the Jets ended up kind of catching some strays because he felt like the Jets did the offseason wrong before last season, and he doesn't want the Broncos to do that this season. And so, or no, actually, I think it's that the Jets are doing the offseason wrong right now. And that's what the Broncos did last season. Let me correct that. So right now, there's so much media buzz surrounding the addition of Aaron Rodgers. You know, you have Hard Knocks coming up. And then it was the same way for the Broncos last offseason. They'd added Russell Wilson, and it did seem like there was a lot of posturing and things like that needed to be done. And so Sean Payton was just saying, like, we're not going to do that. Everything that the Broncos did last season, we're not doing this season. And the Jets are doing it right now. So in a retrospect, and you look at it all in the grand scheme, it's not that crazy, like the way that he came. But I really liked Coach Saleh's response. He said, if you ain't got no haters, you ain't popping. So, period.
Period.
Sean Payton gave weird vibes for that. It was like being in like, you left your ex-husband and you moved on to a new husband, but you're still talking about the old family. Like, this ain't your business anymore. Like, let that go. Let that be over there. For whatever reason, the Jets caught strays, and they were just kind of like, okay, cool. This is my house. Handle yours, right? Like, pay the business that mind the business that pays you is what I think. Like, stay over here. But I get what you're saying in terms of like what he's trying to set up, but weird way to put it. A weird way.
I do think it's worth noting, like, in the metaphor that you used, there's a weird connection there, because it's like, obviously Nathaniel Hackett has moved on, and Sean Payton doesn't know him. Like, they don't know each other. Sean Payton acknowledged, like, we have no connection to him. But I think there's something.
I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think there's something to the fact that Nate Hackett was a big reason that Aaron Rodgers wanted to go to the Jets. You know what I mean? And so it's like, that's why they're this big off-season topic. And so maybe that's one reason why he felt the need to throw some shots, because like Hackett went from the Broncos, where it was a whole bunch of media buzz. Now he's with with the Jets, whole bunch of media buzz again. So maybe he felt like he needed to get that off his chest.
It's funny. Very odd to me. So we will see what happens. Callie, thank you so much for joining us. We definitely will have you back again. Take care. So Jaylen Brown, as we know, received the richest deal in NBA history. But when he finally did his presser to talk about it, he talked about generational wealth and bringing Black Wall Street to Boston. And I wasn't expecting all of that at the presser. So, you know, shout out to Jalen for thinking in this way. It's clearly something he's about. But what were your thoughts on it, Zena, and what he had to say?
It was incredibly impressive, the way that he thought it through, presented to the press, and also really impressive that, you know, he gets this $304 million contract, and immediately his first instinct is to do something and announce something around the community. What I found interesting was this notion that society has. It's kind of subliminal, that the second that a big time athlete, you know, gets a significant paycheck, there's an expectation that they do something good with it. And it's an expectation you don't see with other executives, right? You don't see the expectation that when someone gets promoted to the CEO of a company and they're making X, Y, and Z millions and millions of dollars a year, that they should be doing something in the community. Yet if we don't see LeBron doing good things, we don't see Jaylen Brown doing good things, we don't see Steph doing good things, or athletes in general doing good things, there's this judgment against them. And I say executives learn from these athletes, right? This is his first instinct, is to make his presser not about, yeah, I deserve it, this is what I'm gonna do for the team, da-da-da. His instinct immediately was, I wanna help my community. And I commend that, and I hope corporate America should lean into this, because there's people making way more money than him, not doing the level of, or not planning to do the level of philanthropy that he is. So kudos to Jalen. Jalen for president.
For sure. We also got some welcome news about Bronny James. LeBron James sent out a thank you to the people, thanking everyone for prayers. But he got released from the hospital, and it seemed like everything went successful. So that was welcome news. That was welcome news to see. And also, you know, it was good. I know there was some reporting that came out after that, like he was conscious also when he went. So even though he went into cardiac arrest, he was conscious when he went to the hospital. Right. He got out of the ICU relatively early, and now he's released and gone home and continuing his recovery. So that was great news. But then we heard some not so great news today, Zena. TMZ.
Yeah, TMZ, God, like shame on you as a platform, releasing the chilling phone call in which, you know, Bronny was called for help. We don't need to hear that. This is not entertainment for us. This is someone's life at stake. And it's really unfortunate that they thought they needed to release that. And I don't want to say sorry to the LeBron family. I don't think they'll care if the comments for me, but TMZ should apologize, because that's not necessary at all.
No, it's very distasteful.
Incredibly.
Listen, again, we just want to send love and prayers to the James family, and we're happy about Bronny and keep the light there. Also want to remind you guys, you can find all your favorite NBC sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. And thank you for tuning in with us for Ladies First Fridays. We love you, Zena. Thank you for joining me. And guess what? Zena and I will be back on Monday. Have a great weekend, y'all. Have a great weekend.
Enjoy it. Bye, Nat.
Later.
Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget, you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.